Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into something totally fascinating, and honestly, it's pretty much a blueprint for the future of national security. We're looking at how the Maldives, a gorgeous but incredibly climate-vulnerable island nation, is actively building this indestructible, globally distributed digital soul to protect its very sovereignty. You see, when a country faces massive existential threats, like rising sea levels or extreme natural disasters, just securing physical borders, well, it just isn't enough anymore. You've got to secure your data, your citizen identities, your critical infrastructure. You essentially have to build a digital twin that literally cannot be destroyed.
So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. Number 1, we'll cover the sovereign digital mesh. 2, local city center micro DCs. 3, embassy and regional data nodes. 4, unified zero trust operations. And finally, number 5, we're going to put the whole thing through the ultimate stress test.
All right, let's jump right into part 1, the sovereign digital mesh, which is their unified national framework.
The Maldives essentially uses a brilliant 5-layered approach to handle data resilience. Think of it like a giant onion of digital security. Layers 1 and 2, those act as the national core and the disaster recovery sites right there at home. Then, expanding outward, Layer 3 pushes that data out to local city centers. Layer 4 exports it globally to their embassies, and Layer 5 taps into remote sovereign data centers sitting in neighboring countries. By intelligently nesting all these layers together, they make absolutely sure that from the main hub in Male all the way to a remote offshore facility, there's just no single point of failure anywhere in their infrastructure. Moving right along to Section 2, Local City Center Micro DCs. This is all about edge computing for resilience. Now, what's wild here is the sheer micro scale of these edge nodes. We are talking about just 1 to 3 server racks running on a tiny 10 to 50 kilowatts of power. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the energy it takes to run just a few standard household ovens. But hey, do not let the size fool you. Every single one of these nodes is packed with dual fiber connections, satellite backup, and optional solar batteries so they can just keep humming along even if the entire local power grid completely collapses. And here is where it gets super clever. It's all about the placement. Because they have such a tiny footprint, these centers are hidden right in plain sight. We're talking municipal buildings, transport hubs, even police and fire stations. You might wonder, why on earth put servers next to fire trucks? Well, because if the central government goes dark, the local hospital down the street still has the critical, localized data it desperately needs to function independently. Okay, zooming out now for Section 3. Embassy and regional data nodes. This is exactly how they secure global continuity. We've got 2 very different, yet completely complementary foreign strategies happening here. On one side, you have these embassy nodes. They are super small, just 2 to 4 racks, but they offer absolute diplomatic protection, basically acting as sovereign digital islands in places like the UK, the UAE, or Singapore. On the flip side, you've got remote sovereign data centers. These are massive, 1-megawatt operations sitting in physically isolated cages within friendly neighboring countries, protected by ironclad contractual sovereignty. So one gives you untouchable legal immunity, while the other gives you massive regional redundancy. The absolute superpower of the embassy node comes down to this one crucial concept: extraterritoriality. What this means is that even if a server rack is physically sitting in a bustling embassy in London or Dubai, legally, it is untouched Maldivian soil. The host country has zero legal right to access, inspect, or tamper with any of that equipment. It is strictly classified as a diplomatic asset, which completely insulates the nation's core data from any foreign interference. Which brings us to Section 4, Unified Zero Trust Operations, basically operating as one central nervous system. In a zero trust framework, absolutely no system or user gets implicit trust. None. Imagine a local technician in a foreign country needs to go fix a physical cable on one of those remote racks. Because they use zero trust, that local tech never has any access whatsoever to the actual data. The control is absolute. Every single encryption key is held securely back home in the Maldives. Every physical action taken by those remote hands is strictly supervised through CCTV, with detailed access logs managed directly by the central hub. The data is locked down, segmented, and entirely controlled by the Maldivian Nerve Center. All right, time for Section 5, the ultimate stress test, combined resilience model. Let's throw the absolute worst-case scenarios at this thing and see what happens. Scenario A, we have a complete, cascading national blackout across the islands. The grid is entirely dead. How on earth does this digital mesh respond? Instantly, the system intentionally fragments to protect itself. Those city center micro DCs we talked about, with their solar backups, they keep the local hospitals and emergency networks running without a hitch. Meanwhile, your embassy nodes scattered across the globe immediately step up to manage the core national systems, while the remote data centers ensure full global continuity. So the lights might be out, but the nation's digital heart just keeps right on beating.
Moving to scenario B, a catastrophic event. Let's say an underwater landslide or a rogue ship anchor slices right through those vital submarine cables connecting the islands to the outside world. The nation is now physically severed from the global internet.
Without skipping a single beat, satellite failover kicks right in. This alternative communication pathway keeps the local microcenters and foreign embassies completely online and talking to each other. And at the exact same time, the massive regional data centers just continue their data replication safely in the background, patiently waiting for that primary connection to be restored.
Scenario C. This is the ultimate existential threat. A devastating natural disaster, like a massive tsunami, strikes the islands themselves, seriously threatening the physical hardware of the primary national data centers.
In this terrifying scenario, the nation's digital soul essentially evacuates. It survives completely intact abroad. The embassy nodes and remote data centers instantly take over all the critical national workloads, providing a full disaster recovery environment. And back home, any surviving local microcenters power the vital on-the-ground emergency response, completely unburdened by the need to run the rest of the government.
And finally, scenario D. What if the threat actually isn't at home? What if the foreign country hosting your remote data suddenly faces severe political instability? Well, this is exactly where the legal and geographic diversity pays off big time. Because of that extraterritoriality we discussed earlier, those embassy servers remain legally protected Maldivian assets. No one can seize them. And for the larger remote data centers, the wider mesh simply routes around the problem. It smoothly shifts the computing workloads to nodes in other, more stable countries. It is totally seamless.
The ultimate payoff here is honestly astounding. By intelligently layering local city microcenters with extraterritorial embassy nodes and massive remote sovereign hubs, the Maldives achieves total global continuity against almost any conceivable climate disaster, geopolitical crisis, or infrastructure failure. So we've just seen how a highly vulnerable island nation with limited space has managed to engineer a virtually indestructible digital twin. Which leaves us with one really critical question. If they can do this to guarantee their survival, is your country's data, your identity, your financial records, your critical infrastructure truly safe? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning how our digital world is built.